She was shortlisted for an Amnesty International Freedom of Expression Award. And you may know her because she is the voice of Pamela Winchell from Welcome to Night Vale. Please give it up for Desiree Burch.
As all of us who live in modern society know, there are many excellent reasons to never touch a black person's hair. The first one is, I don't know you. And the second one is, even if I do know you, I don't know you like that. I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, you having your hand in my hair is the equivalent to you having your hand in my purse. You got no fucking business being up in there. And we all understand that little example because we were raised in a capitalist society where we were taught to respect other people's property, but just not mine right now. Okay? And what's more, I mean, you guys know all the critical race theory, I won't get into it, but sometimes the shit takes hours to get done. I mean, just several hours just to get to this regular old ponytail shit, you know? And the last thing I need is you coming up with your curious little white hand that you should have used to Google some information for yourself, reaching into my damn hair and screwing it all up, all right? Because that's what's gonna happen, okay? And look, I'm just saying, it's dead, I get it. It's a collection of dead cells, but there's a lot of personal history that gets tied up into those locks and kinks and twists. I mean, for instance, one of my earliest memories at all of being alive is being at my grandmother's house while she was brushing my hair. So imagine 3 or 4-year-old me, afro puff, and this hand of hers all reached around, and then this one just yanking a brush through, yanking it, and every time she rips hair out this way, she donkey punches me in the back of the head with this hand. Right? And I'm sitting there crying, right? But I'm not supposed to cry because feelings are for white people. So I'm just sitting there, right? And she's like, oh, you tender-headed. You one of them tender-headed kids. You tender-headed. And indeed, I was the sensitive one in my family, right? I was the one who dared to feel my feelings where everyone else swallowed them down inside. And I guess there was just this implicit understanding where it was like, look, babe, if you're gonna be black in this universe, you're gonna have to be a little dead inside if you wanna get through the rest of this mostly alive. All right, getting it, okay. So, and I don't want you to think hair time was all bad. Hair time was also great because it was gossip time. It was a time where my mom and my sister eventually started doing my hair. They would sit around and my mom would tell us all these things that she would never tell us if we sat down and asked her. You know, things about who she was when she was growing up, what she dreamed of, what she wanted. And she would tell us things like, how she couldn't stand her sister and how she felt like she was trapped in a loveless marriage with my father, who had been cheating on her for years up until this point, and how she felt like she couldn't escape because she had 4 kids that she couldn't afford to raise on her own, because I guess boundaries are for white people too. And so she told me all of this, and then at one point she said to me, if it wasn't for you kids, I wouldn't even be here. No pressure, all right? So all of that is to give you a little sense of context of my family as we get into the actual story. So picture it, I'm 11 years old, it's 1990 something, all right? And I'm sitting there, it's like a Monday morning, I don't know, it's a day that starts in day and ends in school, I don't know, but I'm getting ready for school. And my sister's helping me get ready, and she's meant to come in there and just do my hair. So it's not gonna be anything complicated, no ripping, no hot combing, just a regular fishtail braid down the center, back, right? Just keep me looking normal so I can go to school in white middle-class suburbia, right? So she comes in, and I don't know, she braids my hair, and I don't know if it was because she was in a hurry or because she hated my little goody two-shoes guts, because I was always snitching on her. I don't know why, but she braided the most fucked up fishtail braid down the back of my hair. It was normal on this side, and there was a big pucker on this side. I looked like the elephant. It was like if this was my ponytail, instead of doing this, she did this and then this and was like, okay, you're ready to go to school. And I was like, okay. And I do the once over in the mirror, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, oh, what the hell? Trying to pat it down I have no idea how I'm gonna survive a day in 4th grade like this. Do you understand? I'm already a fat kid. I can't go poking society in the eye by also having fucked up hair. You gotta help me out. And I'm sitting there looking this, and I can't tell her to fix my hair because she already is my half-sister and hates my guts. And all I can do is stare at myself in the mirror and start sobbing. And you know that kind of sobbing where you really hope somebody sees you sobbing so they can like intervene. So I'm there for like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, like a boo-hoo, you know, like I'm really trying to get this one going. At this point, I'm like just like coughing, crying, snot, everything. She finally comes in and she's like, what's wrong? You know, and I want to be like, the hair woman, you braided a tumor into my goddamn head, but I like can't say that to her, right? So, you know, I'm trying to say something neutral and I'm like, well, everyone is gonna make fun of me, right? I'm sort of being neutral. And she's like, why is everyone gonna make fun of you? And I'm kind of thinking like, haven't you ever been to a school? Like that's all kids do. Like that's the curriculum. I don't understand why you don't get it, you know? And so like at this point, like the crying about the hair becomes the crying about the everything. I liken it to like the day I burnt my Pop-Tarts. It was the last 2 I had for breakfast. And then it was just suddenly like, I can never have anything good. This always happens to me. I'm never gonna, you know, like that kind of crying. And I was recognizing that this was the only time anyone was asking me how I felt and actually listening. So I just started crying for everything. Like I started crying about body issues and my parents and like the universe, just everything. So she's like, well, what's wrong? And I'm like, look, I just feel ugly all the time and nobody ever talks to me. Nobody ever says anything in this family. It's like we are a bunch of strangers who just live here, and who the hell is dad anyway? It's like he's never even around. I mean, I don't even know who that guy is sometimes. Okay, I should have like reined it in with the hair. But you know, because I didn't tell her this truth, out came all of these other truths that had been sitting there for quite some time. And my sister goes, huh, and then walks out of the room. And I'm starting to realize she's never gonna fix this hair. Like, I'm gonna have to get through the whole day like this. Okay, fine. So I go to school, I somehow survive this, right? I get home, you know, and apparently when she went out of the room, she went to call my mom at work to tell her everything I'd said. So my mom gets home from work and she's like, you know, I heard you said some things today, you know, like about how your father's never around, because of course that's the narrative she's hearing. None of the other stuff I've ever said about my family, just about my dad. And I was like, well, I had to be honest, yes, I did say that. And then it was like this quick sequence of events where suddenly he's home and he's in his room and they're talking and suddenly I'm being brought in front of him and she's going, tell your father what you told me. And I'm just like, man, I did not want to like have to own up to all, like I was just having a day. Can't we just leave it at that? But you know, at this point, like I gotta really stick with this whole, you know, lie, half truth, whatever you wanna call it. So, you know, I tell them like, you know, I feel terrible about myself and nobody talks to us in the family and we're completely disengaged. And I say, you know, and you're never around. And it's like, I don't even know who you are, like verbatim. And his response is like the male response, you know, immediately. It's like, well, you know, to my mom, you know, I don't know what more you want me to do. I mean, I'm working my knuckles to the bone and supporting all these kids and blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's what's going to happen when you're blindsided by this information. But then soon he starts like crying and like the ugly dad cry where he's not actually crying. He's just trying to pretend he's not crying. He's like, oh, I think I got some sand in my eye. Oh, and you're like, what are you doing, man? Just let it go. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so I vividly remember this, and at some point my mom just took over all the arguing. I think I started watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like I was just done. I was out of the conversation, but like he carried this thing with him for years, and I'd like to tell you that everything changed after that day he started weeping, but of course like nothing changed as far as I could tell. Like everybody was still just as disengaged and he was doing his own thing. But I called him up after his father died like a couple of years ago, and he was like, you know, I don't know if you ever remember this thing that you told me. And I already knew what he was gonna say because he told me, I don't know if you remember this like 3 previous times before, but because he's old, he didn't remember telling me. So he's like, I don't know if you remember saying this. And I was like, oh, okay, I know the thing. And he was like, you know, when you told me, you know, like that you didn't even know who I was, right? And he's like, I don't know if you knew, but that really hurt me. And I said, yeah, I know, Dad, I know it did. But I didn't say sorry. And he didn't say sorry. And we both went on about our ways. He was like, oh, well, you know, that's why I started hanging out with you kids on Friday nights, you know, buying pizza and like watching movies with you guys, because he thinks that movies are a conversation and that counts as family time. And I was in my head, I was like, yeah, Dad, but like you only eat 2 foods, pizza and steak. And also like you would sit us down and watch Predator. Do you know what I mean? He would just put on the movie he was gonna watch anyway and let his like 12 and 8-year-old just sit there looking at people getting eviscerated eviscerated in like THX surround sound. But he was a young father, like I gotta give him, some kind of slack, right? And it wasn't until a year ago when I was visiting from the first time after moving and I went home and he just said, he did the thing where he's like, look, I know I wasn't a good father. I wasn't always there. And when you start to get to a certain age, you start thinking about the things that you should have done. And I just want to tell you that you always made me proud, and I've always loved you, and I'm sorry. And most of us don't necessarily get that satisfaction from our parents when we have, difficulties with them. There are always, other, circumstances that get in the way on that. And I don't even know if it's actually satisfaction. All I can say is at that moment, something in me broke. And it wasn't like my heart. It was just like this, oh yeah, you got it? Okay. Something in me broke. It was like I had been carrying around this very precious ceramic object for years and years, trying to protect it. And at some point, it just shattered. And I didn't know what happened, but I knew that I actually never cared about that thing in the first place and that I wasn't responsible for it anymore. And I realized when he told me that he was sorry, I was no longer responsible to be like the harbinger of my mother's guilt and bitterness toward him, and that I didn't have to have any resentment toward him, and that anything that I was upset about in my life was down to me to figure out and had nothing to do with him anymore. And all of that feeling of resentment just went away suddenly with that one word, sorry. And I had all of this broken ceramic in my hands, and I was like, oh, I don't have to carry this shit anymore. And more importantly, I can't carry this shit anymore, all right? I have to find something else for my hands to do, which, if you think about it, is kind of the best reason to not touch a black person's hair. Don't you have your own shit to be taken care of? Thank you.
Comes the world.